welcome back to another episode of the Kate Hamilton Health Podcast. So in today's episode, I chat with Ashley Bizzell. Ashley is a highly experienced registered dietitian and certified diabetes care and education specialist with over 15 years of clinical expertise. As the clinical nutrition manager at Nutra Health, Ashley leads clinical nutrition coaching, curriculum development and training for global partners, focusing on advancing initiatives around type 2 diabetes remission. Her specialty areas include weight management, cardiovascular disease, and critical care nutrition. Ashley is deeply passionate about leveraging telehealth, which I didn't know what it meant until I chatted to her, and lifestyle medicine to reverse chronic diseases and improve patient outcomes. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree from Clemson University and completed her dietetic internship at Winthrop University. Ashley brings a wealth of clinical experience combined with a passion for evidence-based, patient-centered care that empowers people to take control of their health, which is exactly what we talk about. Her insights into lifestyle medicine and intermittent fasting offer listeners practical, science-backed tools to transform their well-being. Now, saying that, we chat, especially at the start of this podcast, around the topic of fasting. And any of you who know me at this stage know that I'm not a big fan of fasting, particularly when it comes for weight loss and sustainable lifestyle. However, it was a really interesting conversation to learn scientifically what happens in the body with different types of fasts. That doesn't mean that I think it's something that I would promote to my clients, but hearing Ashley's expertise was really, really interesting on what actually happens in the body and how it can actually improve your health. We talk about, in relation to fasting and other lifestyle factors, reversing chronic diseases like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So, like, this is groundbreaking. We talk about lifestyle medicine, food as medicine. So really looking to eat to be healthy, which is what I'm all about, and having a healthy lifestyle. And that part of this conversation I found so valuable, that this is about a healthy lifestyle. This is about eating for health. This is not about super restricting everything. And I talked to her a lot around balance and how I feel that balance is a really important part for living our healthy lifestyles. And I do challenge her on that. And she is in agreement that it is important for us to live a healthy lifestyle. So while we talk about fasting, it is very much directed towards reversing chronic diseases from a medical standpoint, which is a really, really interesting narrative to hear. I also got some nutrition tips from her. So as a registered dietitian, what did she think were the do's and the don'ts in relation to nutrition? So I asked her this, she gave her advice. I asked her why, the different recommendations. She gave some really, really helpful advice here as well. And what I really loved about this conversation is how much it promotes a proactive approach to our health. And even if we're suffering with chronic disease, we can still be proactive about it. And that's what I loved about this conversation. I think you will love that about this conversation too. And you will leave this conversation feeling more empowered about your own health. Ashley, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you so much for having me today.
I'm really excited to talk about everything that we are going to talk about. Before we do you want to let everyone know a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure, yes. So my name is Ashley Bizzell. I'm a dietitian. I'm also a diabetes educator, and I work for Nutra Health. I'm not sure if you're familiar with prolonged fasting. Maybe you've heard of Proline, but I'm in the medical arm of that company and actually the director of clinical nutrition and global training there. So we do evidence-based nutrition care with our patients, incorporating fasting-mimicking diet along with lifestyle medicine to optimize health and drive chronic diseases into remission.
Amazing. What led you on this path? Like, this is your life's work now that you're working towards in relation to treating these chronic diseases.
Yes, it's interesting. I guess I was always a little bit interested in nutrition and wanted to go into the medical field. And I loved that nutrition was something I could take with me for life. And as I've gotten older, there's not a lot of nutrition education component in medical school. And it's something that's so vital, so basic to kind of our survival and prevention. And ended up staying in nutrition, obviously. And I've been practicing for about 20 years, but had been in hospital setting, outpatient setting. I've always loved working with people, but in the outpatient setting, you get to see the outcomes. You get to see people make change and improve their health moved into the telehealth space in 2020, as a lot of people were kind of forced to do. But I've been here at NutriHealth, and I've just seen tremendous improvements incorporating both fasting and just good daily habits to optimize their health in the long term and prevent disease. So it's a great place to be, but just something I'm truly passionate about and helping others.
I'm really excited to talk about this because in this world and this online world of health and fitness, everything is about fat loss, everything is about weight loss, everything is about here's a quick fix, here's a drug to take. It's always something in order to how you look and what's the quick and easy way to do this.
Mhm.
So I'm really, really excited to talk about nutrition for health. And even just by you talking about seeing these tremendous changes, to have an empowering conversation around chronic disease and what, so if someone is at the early stages of type 2 diabetes or, or whatever, that they don't need to feel hopeless. I'm really excited to talk about this. So I suppose what I really want to ask first
Yeah.
is let's talk a little bit around fasting. So
Okay.
quite often what I find in the health and fitness space is people really want to fast, and they really want to fast because they think they're going to lose weight, and that's the reason why they're doing it. As a health and fitness coach who's trying to help people just build steady habits, I tend to promote, let's spread your meals out and let's make sure that we don't leave too long, so we're not, that we're not getting too hungry and then we make really bad choices. So what I would love to hear is from you is the science behind why someone might fast and what that's going to do to help them.
Sure, that's a great question. And first of all, I want to address two different types of fasting because that's really key too. So, most people are familiar with intermittent fasting. That's where you maybe do a 12-12 fast. So, 12 hours of the day, you keep all of your meals within those 12 hours, and the other 12 hours you rest. Some people do a more concentrated window where they eat everything within 8 hours and then rest for the other 16 hours, or every other day water fast, things like that. There are benefits to intermittent fasting. There's metabolic benefits, there can be weight loss benefits, even kind of some mental clarity benefits. But there's also prolonged fasting. And that's different. That's when you're fasting for greater than 48 hours and where your body kind of shifts into all these really cool science processes, something that our body just naturally knows how to do. That is where we see not only weight loss benefits, but that's where we see true cellular benefits, true kind of systemic changes because it impacts all of the cells in our body. In fact, we go into something called autophagy. Have you ever heard of autophagy?
No.
So, autophagy, auto meaning self, phagy meaning eating, is our body's kind of natural ability to self clean. It's like recycling, and our body just knows how to do it. We just don't get a chance because, as you mentioned a minute ago, we're all about instant gratification and we can DoorDash anything. We can have food at our house in moments. But this is where we give our body rest and it goes into this mode of cleanup. And the way it gets there is that it's not triggering these nutrient sensing pathways that are in our body. And so it allows the body to just kind of rest, go into cleanup mode. That's where we see improvement in insulin sensitivity, reduction in inflammation, reduction in that visceral fat that you were talking about. But what's really neat is that there's preservation of muscle mass. And as you know, in the health space too, like muscle is so key to health span and overall health. That's our good metabolic tissue. So that combination of getting to do some of that fasting, both intermittent, and then if you want that autophagy and the cellular cleanup with prolonged fasting, gives you these long-term health benefits. And in fact, can reduce your cellular age or your biologic age.
Wow. Okay. I have so many questions. I'm literally writing them down here as you're talking because I'm like, I need to remember what I want to say.
Once I get
So,
started, it's hard to stop, Kate.
yeah, no, this is so fascinating. Okay. So, I have lots of questions. First of all, so yeah, intermittent fasting when we're talking about, yeah, like 12 on, 12 off, 8 on,
Yes.
whatever minus that 16 off. Then you're talking about more prolonged fasting. How long might someone fast for?
Sure. I mean, there are people that do prolonged fasting for days at a time. What I love in the fasting mimicking diet, which is a 5-day fast, you get nourishment. So it's essentially a tool that's used to get you into autophagy, get the benefits of the cellular rejuvenation and renewal, but with nutrition. In fact, it gives you just enough kind of flying under the radar there that you can get into the process of autophagy. But it takes away the safety concerns of maybe micronutrient deficiency, maybe low blood sugar, low blood pressure, even, or dehydration. But let's face it, it also just takes away adherence because I know I'm personally not strong enough to do a 5-day water fast. And this gives you some nourishment throughout to
Oh,
make
so
it
you're
safe and
consuming
doable.
a product, is it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Consuming a product. It's a structured kind of meal plan that gives you just enough macronutrients that you're flying under the radar, but you get the benefits of a prolonged fast.
Okay, and you would do this for 5 days.
You would do it for 5 days. And the reason why we stop there is because that's a good amount of time to get into this autophagy, this cellular cleanup, but that people can fit it into their routines and make it something that they could do, quarterly if they're already healthy, or if they have maybe a chronic disease that they're trying to improve, that you might do it in a program setting like the L Nutra Health programs that allows you support and guidance on how to utilize the product and help you in between.
Okay. So that kind of answers my question then on how does one get the discipline to do this and how often that would need to happen as well. I suppose what happens after? So like my experience from diet culture would be,
Mhm.
all these fasts, all these diets, all these quick fixes, and that's
Mhm.
great. People see improved health benefits, they drop body fat, but then what? They go back to their usual old habits and we're back to square one.
Yes, that's where having a coach to really motivate you is so helpful. There's so much science behind, doing a prolonged fast, and there's the benefits are independent of any changes that you do in between just by doing the fast and several cycles of that. But it really helps to have somebody encourage you along to shift maybe your habits and help give you some practical advice and some motivational interviewing to keep you on track. And putting into play other lifestyle factors that are so impactful to our overall health, sleep, stress management, exercise, strength training, avoidance of risky substances. All of these, they all kind of work together to help us with our health if we use them, if we incorporate those techniques into our routine.
How do you manage when you find that your service or your product is attracting people who are inclined to disordered eating or eating disorders, where they're like, oh, great, like, this fasting diet, this restrictive, this, like, because there's,
Mhm.
with obviously promoting things online as well, it can be helpful or extremely detrimental.
Yeah,
Everything can be extremely helpful or extremely detrimental depending on
right.
who's consuming.
You're absolutely right, Kate. That is something we screen for. It's really important. We would never want something to exacerbate, especially if somebody's kind of been in remission and doing well to exacerbate those symptoms. So that's why kind of in a support just setting, our we have dietitians that are trained to know to look out for those things. But that is one of the exclusion criteria that we would not recommend fasting for that purpose, because you see some immediate changes in your body, weight loss changes, but we don't want to ever contribute to a disease for someone.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, I suppose your objective is disease reversal, which brings me into, let's talk a little bit about like what you're saying, that with this fasting, and we'll talk about the different types of things you do as well. We're talking reversing things like type 2 diabetes and heart disease. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we've got so many great stories, like patient stories and how they've been successful. This one gentleman's coming to mind that he had diabetes about 4 years, type 2 diabetes, and was on medication. He just wasn't taking it seriously. Sometimes we live in denial of what's really going on because we don't feel it. Diabetes is one of those things that you don't feel pain unless it's really bad. You really see kind of those long, negative effects with neuropathy and different things like that. But, Steve saw his A1C climbing and it finally got to a point where it was like, I've got to do something about this. And he started taking his medication. And then he found out about the fasting mimicking diet and the programs. And he thought, I need support to be successful. I know I can't do this on my own. And so he joined the program. His A1C was 7.2. He He was on metformin to control his blood sugars. But after 3 cycles of fasting, and then we worked on just like simple steps, like increasing your steps, setting a goal of steps each day. He's trying to do some strength training twice a week, trying to just cut back on some processed foods, just really simple things. He was able to bring that A1C down to 5.5, which is not only out of the diabetes range, but out of the pre-diabetes range too. And so then from there, his physician that works with us he said, you know what, let's drop down off of some of this medication, which he did. And then 3 cycles later, he was maintaining that A1C without the medication. And now he's been off a good 6 months. He's lost about 22 pounds and he has been able to sustain that great A1C loss and his weight and continuing on with healthy habits. But what I love, because all of those data points are really cool, but what I truly love is when you hear somebody tell you, Ashley, I've got energy that I haven't had before. I'm sleeping better. I just feel so much more confident in my own skin. To me, those are the big wins. And he's just not feeling kind of the daily burden of having to be strapped to taking medication and going to the doctor so frequently and things like that. Like those things, those remind us of why we're doing what we're doing. So
No, that's amazing to hear. What exactly is happening in the body when to cause these reversals? Like, I presume that your product that you're talking about that people consume during the fast is more just to keep safe levels of nutrition in place, and it's actually the fasting that's doing the work. Am I correct?
yes, you're absolutely right. Fasting kind of it triggers a shift from burning glucose as the main source of fuel, which is what happens for most of us, to going into burning fat and kind of going into some ketosis, burning those ketones, fatty acids. And what that does is it improves insulin sensitivity. It reduces levels of IGF-1, which is one of those nutrient sensing pathways I mentioned earlier. It's a growth factor that's linked to aging and disease. It also activates that cellular cleanup. So that promotes some regeneration. A lot of our research will show improvement in beta cell function, which is something that gets destroyed kind of over time and you see in the diabetes population. And so it just helps kind of overall with reducing visceral fat, reducing that inflammation and the insulin sensitivity.
That's amazing. And I love what you say then as well about, like, yes, you use this fasting tool to I suppose help along the way, but then it is the fundamental habits. It's the lifestyle. Like,
Yes.
is this what you refer to as lifestyle medicine?
Yes, absolutely. Lifestyle medicine is really all about kind of addressing root causes of chronic disease. So instead of being band-aid healthcare where we're just treating the symptoms, we want to dig a little bit deeper. And, that's using things like movement and sleep hygiene and stress and strength training, all of these kind of fundamental habits to build those up to help support your overall health. And that's
Amazing.
really where we see, these reversal and remission of conditions like type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease.
And for most people that you're working with, are they people who are struggling with these diseases, or do you get people coming to you from a preventative point of view that maybe is already healthy and is like, I want to make sure I'm optimizing my health? Or is it really just we focus on people who are dealing with diabetes and heart disease?
Yes, all of the above. In fact, our company is L Nutra. That's kind of like the larger umbrella. And we have a consumer division, Proline, where anybody that's looking to kind of improve longevity, do some prevention, they can utilize the fasting mimicking diet there. And then we have L Nutra Health. That's where I work, and that's our medical arm where it's a disease management program. But within that, we have two great programs. There's a metabolic program, and really anybody can fall into their Kate. I have people that come in with pre-diabetes, or maybe they just want to lose some weight and get in better healthy habits, and they know that they need support. We have people in there that just have high blood pressure or high cholesterol. And then the diabetes program, our most complex program is a 12-month program, and that is specifically for people with type 2 diabetes. And we have people all ages. 35 to 85 in either of those programs. So age is not a limiting factor. You get great support in both. There's labs in both, so you can assess progress. We use body composition scales, so we can also use that to kind of motivate you. It's so motivating when you see that visceral fat being driven down, but that you can keep your muscle mass up. And that's really helpful. So those are our main two programs, and that's really a good place for anybody that's looking to prevent some disease, or maybe you're already have a few biomarkers that you need to be a little bit active and work on.
Is it ever too late in relation to reversing chronic disease or in relation to age? I know you've said we work with people from 35 all the way up, but is it less effective the older you get? I just wanted to interrupt the podcast for a moment to talk to you a little bit about Kate Hamilton Health online coaching. So we have two coaching options available. We have our elite coaching and we have our group coaching service. Our elite coaching service is bespoke, individualized coaching, which will help you to finally break free from diet culture with one-to-one anytime support from your coach and with access to a safe, supportive community. This is a higher ticket coaching option, and the coaching is by application only. If you go to my website, katehamiltonhealth.com, you will be able to apply for elite coaching through there, and we will be in touch to organize a call and to get you up and running. In relation to our group coaching starts on the first Monday of every month. When it's full each month, we do close the doors. With the group coaching is about building the habits, body, and energy of the healthiest version of yourself and finally make it stick. We include personalized calories and portions, food lists, recipes, meal plan ideas, step goals, home or gym based workouts, depending on what you want, changed every 8 weeks, mindset work, app access. So that's the Kate Hamilton Health app, which will be your hub for everything, weekly yoga classes, WhatsApp group community, weekly group Q&A with myself, fun challenges, daily habits form, weekly self check-in, fortnightly check-ins with your coach, a library full of lifestyle guides, a library full of lessons, seminars, and all of this is updated regularly. We have weekly group Zoom calls with myself and the team, regular guest seminars where we get experts on to talk more to you about different topics that we need experts on for. And then we have in-person events twice a year that you will get at a major discount as being a member of the Kate Hamilton Health community. So, as I said, this starts the first Monday of every month. If you go to my website, katehamiltonhealth.com, you will see when the next group coaching intake is starting for you. So we close the doors as soon as that intake is full or the Monday before the group coaching starts. So usually that last Monday of the previous month. So if you head over to katehamiltonhealth.com, all of that information that I've talked through is on the website. You'll be able to book your spot for the next intake there. And I will chat to you all then.
No, we've seen great results at all different ages, and we've seen great results with maybe the length of time that you have been struggling with something. We have people that have had type 2 diabetes for 20 plus years, and they've been on medication the whole time, and they've tried diet after diet and just not been successful, or they have been successful in the short term. And as soon as they stop, everything goes back to the way it was before, including their weight, and sometimes more is added on. We see success with people who've had diabetes 20 years and still be able to come down off of a significant amount of whether it's insulin, whether they're on multiple medications. Most people with type 2 diabetes are on at least 2 or more, some even 6 from other, comorbidities too. So seeing improvement in those. And I know I've focused on diabetes meds, but we see people come down off of their blood pressure medication too, and statins and things like that. So all of these kind of chronic diseases that are related to age and behavior.
Like, this makes so much sense. And just from my own perspective, I love to hear when people don't need medication for things anymore, or are able to reduce it down, because I hate that we are being controlled by medication so much now, and I know it all has its place. It very much depends on what
Yes.
someone is going through and medically, that's, but I just think, there's so much we can do, particularly preventatively with lifestyle. But even just to hear that we don't have to, I think a lot of humans feel like when they're diagnosed with something, they lose the hope a little bit. And it's like, okay, I surrender to this now. But that to know that there's something you can do is
Right.
really, really empowering. However, I also,
Yeah.
just as a nutrition coach, as a personal trainer, a health coach, I preach a lot of balance, because
Mm.
just from my experience of working with a lot of people, that although like it makes me a little bit skeptical about restrictive diets, and even with the science and the medicine behind it, like that I respect the science behind it, but I find sometimes that even things that are prescribed by dietitians, and I mean this very respectfully, by
Sure.
dietitians and doctors, can sometimes, when it translates to an ordinary person's lifestyle, although they know all the information and they know this is super important and this means this for myself, my body, in their day to day lives, it's very hard for them to keep, even with
Mhm.
coaching, without a little bit of balance. So, my point was, my question here is, when someone does a fasting stint, and then you do that, you bring the lifestyle medicine in and you get all these habits in place, like, is there strict rules, or are these people able to be like, it's okay to have a bit of chocolate every now and again, it's okay to go out for dinner with your girls and have a glass of wine, or like, is there balance there? Because I think sometimes what people are hearing from doctors and from dietitians, I don't mean yourself, I just mean in general, it can just be like, you
Sure.
need to do this, and it seems so unreachable for some people, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And I'm right there with you. I believe in balance. In fact, in between fasts, we encourage more of a pescatarian, vegetarian diet, but people come in and have all different, they're everywhere. And we just help them kind of transition to make healthy habits. But nobody can be a saint all the time. In fact, food is one of life's enjoyments. And we want to be able to have balance there. And that's really where you help people be sustainable. If they feel like, oh, okay, I can have that glass of wine, and that's okay. I can have some chocolate here and there, but helping them to be able to find that balance. Sometimes people don't know what
Yeah.
that could look like. And so being able to help them kind of curate that for themselves and not feel deprived, but also feel in more control. I think a lot of times people feel controlled by carbs or by salty foods and processed foods. And so helping them find that we can incorporate some different things and you don't have to be perfect week after week. In fact, a lot of the science behind just the fasting mimicking diet, there are no changes in their day to day, life with eating habits and they just do the fast, monthly. But of course, we want to help people have long-term change and be able to improve, optimize their health in between and move towards healthier diets that are also supportive of reducing chronic disease. But yes, it is not about perfection. In fact, just this week, I was telling one of my members, like, practice is not about being perfect, but it's just about progress. Let's
Yeah.
just kind of put some good habits into place to help you move forward, just to make progress in that direction. So definitely not anything that's overwhelming or you have to, oh, everything changes today. We don't want that. We want it to be this gradual where you feel empowered, you feel confident, and then you're wanting to continue on because it's doable.
I think that's crucial. It's the wanting, isn't it? You need to
Yeah,
want to do, you're not doing something because your dietitian tells you you have to do it. You're doing it because you
you
want to.
want.
And I think if it is a case of, we're talking about chronic disease, it's to make sure that it's not out of fear of the disease, and that
Right.
it's like that you want to feel a certain, it all comes back to like wanting to feel. And
Mhm.
what, like my experience, anyone that I work with that might be kind of pre-diabetic, or their GPs would refer them to be like, you need to work with a nutrition coach or whatever, and a lot of what gets people into that position in the first place, I find, in relation to imbalance with food and overeating and maybe an inactive lifestyle, is it comes down to emotional eating,
Mm,
stress, and
mhm.
guilt. So I think what doesn't work for a lot of people when it comes to restriction is when they think they have to be perfect. And then they
Mhm.
can't be perfect because none of us are perfect.
Right.
But then they feel so incredibly guilty that they can't do it. They feel like a failure. And then they just revert back to the habits that they've been living, which has put them into this position in the first place. And I think this is why people feel so trapped. It's such a deep rooted, complicated emotional issue, as on
Mhm.
top of like all of the the stuff that is going on inside our body that you're talking about. It can really feel like an impossible journey for some people.
Yes, no, it can. I think that's why it's so important to just start small.
Yeah.
Start small, one meal, one habit at a time, focus on adding nourishing foods without being restricting, having support of a lifestyle coach or a dietitian or nutrition coach to help personalize, the plan for you, provide you with some accountability. And I think that can really help it feel more manageable and something that you can fit into your life.
Yeah. We also sometimes need to look at our lives, don't we, as well? Like this is what I find. And I'm always really careful with this. I talk about this more on the podcast than I do really with my clients because like you said, it has to be very step by step. But
Yes.
if your life is so stressful and so hectic that it's making you sick or it's making you eat in a disordered way, something needs to be done about the lifestyle. Like something needs to be done about the life, whether it's the job or the relationships or the combination of it all. And that doesn't mean quit your job, leave your partner and run away from your kids. It doesn't mean that. But it means as well as looking at your habits, your health habits, it's also looking at the other things because like otherwise again, you just trying to climb up that hill that you keep falling back down.
Right, right. We can't if we keep trying to do the same thing without really making changes, we just get so frustrated. You're like, oh, nothing's happening for me, but you're just doing the same kind of diet after diet. You're not really addressing some of those, like you mentioned, other causes like the stress or the lack of sleep or just setting yourself up for success with having the right types of foods in your house,
Yeah.
or whatever it might be, that things that can have a big impact. Yes, all of those are so intertwined. And sometimes you have to kind of look through each of them to figure out. It's almost like being a detective sometimes, working with someone to kind of figure out, okay, is this an area that could be contributing to these habits? So that
Yeah.
again, a root cause. It's the same thing, addressing a
Yeah,
root cause of what's going on.
definitely. In relation to nutrition then, as a dietitian, I obviously would love to ask you this. So, what do you recommend? Like, what are the do's and don'ts in relation to if we're moving away from the topic of fasting and we're just talking about our day to day diets? And I know there's no one size fits all, so I'm asking you a very
Yeah.
general question. I suppose if we break this into two questions, if
Okay.
we are someone who is seemingly healthy and we just want to live a healthy lifestyle, what kind of balance of macronutrients and micronutrients should we be having? Any do's or don'ts there? And then, secondary to that, then, if we are someone who is pre diabetic or is diabetic, separate to fasting, what kind of nutritional, I suppose, what frameworks do we need to consider?
Yes. No, I think those are great questions. And in fact, I really would say the same for both. Really would say, why don't we try to shift from less animal products? So maybe less red meat, incorporating foods that have good fatty acids in them, that are heart protective, that are anti inflammatory. So more fish. So cutting back on the saturated fats. That's really what I'm getting at from reducing animal products. Incorporating more non starchy vegetables of all different colors just to help optimize micronutrients that we get. So more fiber. So it's better for our gut microbiota. I would include more foods like nuts, that they are calorie dense, but they have some protein, they have fiber, they have healthy fats. They're really good for our bodies and keeping us full. I would say, more fruits that are not too high in sugar. So berries, and I love like color. If I want
Yeah.
us to include more of color in our diet and less processed foods, less simple sugars from beverages, less processed foods from a lot of boxed types of meals, a lot of convenience foods, and just stick to more whole foods, more plant based types of foods in your diet. And hydration is so important. Sometimes we don't talk about that a lot, but staying hydrated with water, I think that's really, it was a good diet for anybody, whether it's you have prediabetes or if you're just looking for prevention or maintenance, is
Yeah.
to really shift from too much saturated fat, less simple sugar, more fiber, more healthy fats in our diet. Not be afraid of fat. A lot of people are
Yeah.
afraid of fat.
Yeah. No, I love that you said that. So really we are kind of talking Mediterranean style diet.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I know. And sometimes people are like, if they hear a diet has a name, they're like, oh no, if a diet has a name, it's a bad one. And like Mediterranean diet is like health based. Like it doesn't have to be called a Mediterranean diet, but like it's literally basically what you've just
Yeah.
described, obviously. In relation to coming from like perspective of anyone listening who is listening to a lot of personal trainers online, that's this gym culture and everyone is talking about you need more protein, eat more protein, and everyone's
Mhm.
like stuffing protein bars in their face and protein powder and all of this stuff. And, someone who goes to the gym, I do like to try and make sure I eat enough protein, not to an
Mhm.
obsessive amount. But I know that a lot of people are misguided with how much protein they need, particularly if they're strength training, particularly if they're a woman over the age of, I don't know, 30, yeah, from 30
Yeah.
onwards, isn't it? We start to lose our muscle mass. So, how much protein, and is it possible to get enough protein through the diet that you've mentioned?
Yes, it is possible to get enough protein through more of a plant-based diet for sure. And that's something, working with a coach to help you figure out those foods and kind of combinations to get there is really key. But yes, I mean, we recommend adequate protein for age. And you have to take into consideration goals. I think personalized nutrition is really important. So if somebody is trying to add on muscle mass, then we want to help support that with, maybe you go to the gym and you do some strength training, and then we want to follow up with maybe 25 to 30 grams of protein to help support muscle synthesis, helping them with what their goals are with individualized nutrition. But you're absolutely right. Everybody gets inundated with, more protein is better. It solves all your problems. But in fact, that's not true because too much protein is not stored as muscles in our body. It still be stored as fat if it's too much, it's extra than what our bodies really need and can process. So I think it's important to have balance in our diet to assess what your goals are, make sure we're meeting your needs. As we get older, we do need a little bit more protein too, because we lose that lean mass at a more accelerated rate. And so, having a coach to kind of give you some guidance there with what that looks like for you is really
Yeah.
important.
And what I've noticed with people that, they go hell for leather with the protein is suddenly they have digestive issues and they're like, why am I so bloated? Why am I so backed up? And I'm like, are you eating any fiber? And it's like, oh, I forgot. I'm supposed to eat carbohydrates and vegetables as well as my protein.
Yes.
And then, they increase that and then they're like, why do I still feel like crap? And then you're like, are you drinking enough water? It's like, and I always call that the magic trio. I'm like, protein, fiber, water. Like you have to remember the fiber and water if you are increasing your protein. It's to not take it to such obsessive levels and to like the one question I get so much from people is how do I increase my protein in my diet? And I'm just like, eat a little bit more of your protein source in your meals. Or, people are like, give me some protein snack ideas. I was like, you don't need protein snacks. You need a
Mhm.
little bit more protein source, whatever that is for you in your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinner,
Yes.
rather than like,
But
yeah, having to have a protein yogurt or having to have a protein bar. Or what are your thoughts
because those
on
can be
protein?
really processed too. I was just going to say that a lot of these protein bars and
Yeah,
shakes, you still have to look at those labels because they oftentimes can masquerade as a healthy option for you, but
yeah,
then can be chock full of all kinds of unnatural ingredients. And so that's why we really do push for more whole foods, more
yeah,
plant based types of foods as much as possible.
yeah. Because if
Um,
something says protein on the box, they're marketing to you. So it's
yes.
like, yeah, and there may be good protein in it, but have a look at the ingredients. Make
Yes,
a decision on it yourself.
absolutely. Absolutely. Same with, I would say the same, to a lot of my patients that maybe they are vegetarian and they're like, I'm already eating really healthy. But I never stop there. Like I want to dig a little bit because sometimes they're eating a ton of processed vegetarian food.
Processed vegetarian stuff. Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's still so important to have an understanding of what you're putting into your body.
And I see this in Ireland now. There's a lot of, like, vegan culture has suddenly risen in Ireland in recent years, but our supermarkets are just filled with all these vegan products. It's like vegan sausages and vegan, I don't know, like,
Brownies.
yeah, vegan brownies, all of these stuff. And like, even if we bring it back to the protein products and we're looking at like protein cereal bars or protein pasta, I've seen, which
Yeah.
actually, by the way, has the same amount of protein as normal pasta. I looked at the labels, but that's besides the point. All of these things that are processed, I'm like, if
Mhm.
you enjoy a protein bar, have it as a treat. But like, personally, I would prefer to have some Cadbury's, like chocolate. If I like, I prefer to have some real chocolate myself, personally, if I'm going to have some sugary treat rather than having a protein bar and think I'm being healthy.
No, it's so important to be able to know how to differentiate there because it is very, very misleading.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on protein powder? Like, is there a place for it within a diet? I know protein powder is processed, but are there some that can be better than others? Or is it something that you just don't recommend?
No, we recommend it depending on what somebody's goals are, because if somebody needs extra protein to support them and they're struggling to get that, then I think there are some good quality proteins out there. In fact, we actually have a protein too, an L protein that's a vegan protein powder that can be used. So I think, I always encourage first, using real foods, but if you need help getting there, or maybe you need, sometimes with our protein powder, like we have recipes that we'll send to help incorporate that. So it's not just a drink, but maybe put it in a chia pudding and some
Yeah.
berries, ways that you can use it to help you meet your needs. So I
Yeah.
don't think it's out of the question. You can't do it or anything like that. I think, always push for whole foods first, but I think it can have a place in our
Yeah.
diet.
To supplement a diet, I suppose. And this
Absolutely.
actually brings me into this nice point then around supplements, because this is another question I get asked so much. What
Yes.
supplements do you recommend? What supplements should I be taking? I'm like, just fix your diet.
Yes.
Um, I'm like, just eat more color. But I know that there are certain, especially, I work with a lot of women that are going through perimenopause. So sometimes there are supplements that are particularly helpful. For
Yes.
what would you recommend if we were talking female specific now at the minute? Are there any supplements that you think that females should be taking?
I don't really push supplements too much. Just like you said a minute ago, I just really push for the diet first. If it seems there are areas where they're lacking, maybe it's foods that they don't like, that they avoid, for various reasons, then I would recommend a good quality multivitamin to help, supplement some of those micronutrients. There are good supplements that help, probiotics if needed to help too, to support the gut microbiota. A lot of the good kind of omega-3 fatty acids you see a lot of people taking, fish oil. But those are really the ones I stick to. Now, if I know somebody is taking a medication, for instance, this one comes up because a lot of people I see have diabetes, maybe they're on metformin, and if they're on that chronically, I know they can be deficient in vitamin B12. So things like that, really looking at their whole kind of clinical picture, what's going on to make those suggestions. But absolutely first, focus on good quality nutrition.
Yeah. So really, supplementation is an individual thing with your doctor or your dietitian. You're like, what are you actually deficient in? What do you actually need that you're not getting from your food, or because of medication, that
Mhm.
there is no general need for it, unless it's specific.
Yes, I
Yeah.
agree. Absolutely.
Yeah. What about magnesium?
A lot of people are using magnesium and have deficiencies in magnesium too, or use it to help maybe with gut function or sleep,
Yeah.
especially as you're talking about the perimenopausal, menopausal women that maybe are struggling with some sleep at night. So I think that is one that also can be very beneficial to include if that's something, if you're having some symptoms that may warrant that.
What foods are high in magnesium if we didn't want to supplement or we couldn't afford to supplement?
I think it's important to include, first of all, a variety of foods into your diet. But yes, I would say, that's where some of the protein foods are important that you need to have. And then a lot of our vegetables are important too for magnesium. Are you thinking about specifically like magnesium citrate or glycinate, or what,
I was thinking more
just food
glycinate,
sources
but
in
yeah.
general? So I think a lot of the good, oats can be good for a lot of people with magnesium. Brazil nuts can have magnesium and selenium. Spinach are good options for you too. Chia seeds are good quality.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people use those in a smoothie or pudding, things like that.
Or in their oats. Yeah. So they're
Or
getting
in
plenty in
their
there. Yeah.
oats too, yes, even avocado and, even some dark chocolate too. So there are
Yeah.
definitely a variety of foods that you can use to get, your magnesium
And
source that you
actually, I
love.
learned somewhere, and this maybe it's due to the magnesium in it as well, or there's other compounds in it, that oats can actually make a really nice evening meal, like a supper, because they can help you sleep. I read this somewhere and I found that really interesting. But the way sometimes if people struggle with late night snacking, rather than having like loads of chocolate bars or whatever, that making a nice bowl of oats with some seeds in it and maybe a bit of dark chocolate in, and create a
Mhm.
nice kind of little porridge bowl,
Yes. No,
can be a really nice.
absolutely. Mhm. Yeah, salmon is a good I was just trying to think of other foods too. Salmon is a good source too. Pumpkin seeds are a good source of magnesium. There's lots of options, I think we're just so used to we just feel like, "Oh, I'll just take it in a pill form and not have to worry about my diet." It's so important to have that variety to get
Thank you
all
so
of
much
the
for
things.
all of this insight
Yeah.
in relation to this, because it's so good to, hear from a dietitian as well on these different things that are quite, like, I suppose, trending a lot now, and people are taking in a lot of information online. And I know a lot of women that listen to my podcast are confused by things they're hearing online, and it can be a little bit overwhelming for people. And I just love that you're like, eat more color. I'm like, yes, get as much variety, get as much color in as possible. In relation to less animal products, or like less meat, what is the thought behind that? Is that really due to saturated fat? Like, would you be saying that, like, we really should be minimizing chicken and turkey as well? Or is it really just more red meat we're talking about?
First I start with more of the red meat because of the saturated fat. And then, maybe limiting some of the chicken and turkey, especially the skin and things like that. But I think those can be included. And even with the red meat, I have clients that they don't want to give it up completely. So we may, limit it to twice a month or something like that. But it's really for that saturated fat. And then IGF-1, I mentioned that nutrient sensing pathway earlier that's associated with aging. So when we overdo it on the protein, a lot of times we're overstimulating some of those nutrient sensing pathways and that are related to aging. So that's why we try to cut back on those some and focus more on the plant-based protein. So again, balance. As we mentioned earlier, we try to find good balance and shift towards Mediterranean diet for kind of ultimate to
That's
follow.
so interesting. So if we're consuming too much protein, particularly in the form of animal products, we could actually be aging ourselves.
Yes, if it's too much. And, we go to restaurants and the portion sizes are just out of control. It's a 12-ounce ribeye, it's a huge porter, all of these huge portion sizes that over time you just keep eating, you clean your plate or you kind of adapt to think that that is really what you need, but it's way too much, way too much.
Yeah. So really, as well, looking at our portion sizes.
Portions, yes, it's really important to look at those portion sizes too, because there can be too much of a good thing too.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
hard to overeat broccoli. I think we
Yeah.
would
That's
agree on
true.
that. But yes, some of these foods, we just have to be mindful of how much we have. I usually try to keep things simple when I'm explaining it to people. Like, let's just try to do like a quarter of your plate be your protein source, and a quarter of your plate be a healthier starch like a quinoa or a barley or an oat, and 50% be non-starchy vegetables,
Yeah.
whether that's a big salad with tomatoes and cucumbers, maybe there's peppers, maybe there's spinach or broccoli or any of the other beautiful colored vegetables there to help support and provide you with fullness and that fiber that we need.
Yeah. So that you're bulking up your with the non-starchy vegetables. They're never the problem.
Yeah. And in fact, a lot of people sometimes don't know that one of the benefits besides the micronutrients is that fiber slows down digestion. And so it helps to keep you fuller longer so that you're not just grabbing a quick piece of bread or a little bit of rice or maybe some cereal
Yeah.
and you don't have it coupled with anything else. And then 30 minutes later, you're still hungry. You're just
Yeah.
not being satiated. So.
And it's helping with your gut health, which is helping with your hormone health, which is helping with
Yes,
your,
and your immunity and
yeah,
all of those things.
yeah,
Absolutely.
which is all going to help with cravings as well, which I know is also a huge issue for people. So I suppose, like, I was going to ask you about food as medicine, but I think we've pretty much covered that. Is
Yeah.
there anything else in relation to food as medicine that you think we should know?
No, I think, we can use food therapeutically, choosing good ingredients, choosing dietary patterns that actively promote healing and prevent disease. So, and that just goes beyond nutrition for just sustenance, but it's about kind of influencing that microbiome composition that we were talking about and systemic inflammation. So, food truly can be a tool to
Yeah,
optimize our health. And the fasting is also a tool to help us optimize our health.
yeah. Do we have to fast?
I think you can have good nutrition. It's a great question, Kate. You can have good nutrition and be doing a really good job of maintaining your health. Exercise is key. All of these things are really important. The fasting does help reduce biologic age, the age of our cells, and being more efficient and effective. So, for somebody that's healthy, for you or even for myself, I do maybe 3 to 4 cycles of fasting per year just to optimize kind of cellular cleanup and these misfolded proteins that are in our bodies and broken cellular components and things like that to help clean that up. So I do think it optimizes your health.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's so interesting to know. I suppose before we finished up, I've heard you mentioned the word telehealth.
Yes.
Um, what is telehealth? Because this is a new word to me.
Okay. Yes. Telehealth, I feel like has really expanded care across, all different kind of bridging that geographical barrier gap to where, I see people all over the country, just kind of like you and I are talking like this,
So
but
it's like
getting
online, like it's online coaching.
online. Yes. Online coaching, virtual coaching, where
Yes,
you're
yes,
getting to see them, you get to know them, you have that relationship, but it's not in person. So it's
yeah,
convenient. I think
yeah.
it's a convenience factor. You can be in your own setting. And so there's a comfort too for many people that just helps to give you that accessibility.
And you get to chat to people across the world like we're doing right
Yes,
now, which is
I
amazing.
love it. It is.
But I've never heard it called telehealth before. Now, some other people listen and be like, "Hey, come on, how have you never heard that?" But I've never heard it. But basically, it's what I do. Then it's like online coaching, basically online consulting.
Right. And some people, of course, they live, in a city, but a lot of people don't, and they're in more rural areas and even underserved areas. And so it gives them access to specialized care when it may not have been possible before. So there's
Yeah.
lots of benefits.
Cool. So the company then that you work for, L Nutra Health, you provide meal plans, products, coaching, like nutrition
Yes.
coaching and
Yes,
consult.
we do. So in our diabetes program, we actually provide physician overseeing too. So we partner with a telehealth physician group. And so they approve a person into the program, look at their labs, look at their medication, and then that RD coach is there to support them, empower them, give them guidance, both during the fast and then in between. Because over time, people get more metabolically flexible. They understand the fasting, and that piece is easy, but they need help in between in those 25 days and that support. So, but we have it structured so that every couple of cycles we do labs. That physician sees them again and decides, hey, can we cut back on some of this medication? And that's what we're trying to do. It's not about improving someone's health at the cost of how much medication we can give them to make those numbers look better. It's about digging deeper, helping them improve their overall health, and doing so with less medication if we can.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So it's like a whole panel of professionals helping and
Yes,
guiding you to
right. It's
better
that
health.
team approach to overall health.
Yeah.
And in the metabolic program, there's not the physician oversight, but there is that support with the coach that's yours, that
Yeah.
you can communicate with anytime, not just during those 2 telehealth visits, but through our app, through our EMR, which is our electronic medical record. You can send text and we'll exchange, I'll send sometimes like video links of what to expect this day or meal plans that are personalized to them, or maybe just education on tell me what are plant proteins. And tell me what looks like a normal amount of protein for a meal. People sometimes take pictures of what
Yeah.
they're eating and send them to me. They're like, hey, Ashley, is this okay? Is this a good meal for me? So,
Yeah.
that telehealth gives you a lot of flexibility to help
Yeah.
that person.
It's amazing. So anyone listening, if they want to reach out to you and find out more about what you do, where's the best place to reach you?
Yes, you can reach us at l-nutra, N-U-T-R-A, health.com.
Okay, amazing. And
Or
I
you
will
could
share
just
that in the show
Google
notes.
L-Nutra Health also.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. If we Google L Nutra Health, it'll come up and they can reach you guys through the website and
yeah.
find out more.
Absolutely. There's a little chat bot on there and it'll say Christy. Christy is fantastic. She will help and answer any questions that they have, inform them about the programs and just help them to find the best place for them.
Thank you so much for this
Oh,
conversation.
thank
And I
you.
know I've challenged you on loads of different areas as well, but it's so interesting for me to get to talk to a dietitian like yourself and find out all these different things. And it's been a really interesting conversation. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your approach with us all. I do appreciate it.
Thank you, Kate. It was a pleasure. Anytime.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I would just ask for one thing from you. If at all possible, could you make sure that you subscribe to the podcast? It really does make such a difference. If there's a particular episode that you've enjoyed, please do share it in your WhatsApp groups, share it on your stories, tag myself and the guest in your stories. All of these things really do help to grow the podcast. And obviously, if there's anything you'd like to reflect on, please do leave a comment. It would mean the world to me, and I will see you on the next one.